Good morning. Today is April 7th, 2019, and this is a video message from Spirit Realization Fellowship. My name is Paige Dehart. I'm the founder of the ministry, and this message is called What's in a Name? Grace and Truth by any other name would be as powerful. So I want to start with reading a few readings before I start going into the teaching. The first reading is very short. It's from John 1:17. And it says, "For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." So right there, that's telling us that sometimes maybe if we have a problem with the name of Jesus, there's another way we can look at it. We can call that same name grace and truth. And the point of this whole message is to show you all the many names of grace and truth. It's really about the way we name things that cause things to be disturbing in our lives, which reminds me of what Shakespeare also said is, "'Tis thy name that is my enemy." So the second reading, it's one that sometimes maybe the church could use to give you the old 1-2 blast to show you what a sinner you are, but I'll explain why why I've chose this and after I read it. So this is Galatians 5:16 through 23. And it says, "I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish." "But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I have told you beforehand, just as I also told you in time past, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such there is no law." Now the next reading is invocations from the Rig Veda. And it says, "Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. With our ears may we hear what is good. With our eyes may we behold thy righteousness. Tranquil in body may we who worship thee find rest. Hail to the Supreme Self. May my speech be one with my mind, and my mind be one with my speech. O thou self-luminous Brahman, remove the veil of ignorance from before me, that I may behold thy light. Do thou reveal to me the spirit of the Scriptures. May the truth of the Scriptures be ever present to me. May I seek day and night to realize what I learned from the sages. May I speak the truth of Brahman." And then finally, I want to share one that's very familiar to most of us, and it's the prayer of St. Francis. "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life." And then just a few other things I want to throw out there is what Emmett Fox called the 7 main aspects of God, which are life, truth, love, intelligence, spirit, soul, and principle. And then 1 John 4:16, which says God is love. This message came to me because I've been doing the Deepak and Oprah 21-day meditation series on accessing grace through gratitude. And one of the things Deepak shared is that grace is a potential in all of us. And that got me thinking, because just like we're talking about, grace and truth is another name for God or Jesus. And so it made me realize that if grace is a potential in all of us, well, so is any other name that you can use for that. And so that kind of got me, on this message, because that's the problem, is we're born into a world of belief and separation, and which is fear-based. And in that world, everything seems either black or white. Because just like in all those different readings we read, just like where there is darkness, let me show light. So it seems as they're apparent opposites. But what we really know, with quantum physics, that in real reality, everything is a wave potential, and the expectation of the observer brings forth whatever particles, so whatever form it's going to take. And so in reality, there is no duality. It's simply a continuum, a dynamic continuum of transformation. So that means where there is darkness, let me show light, means let light show me that there is no darkness. One thing that I find very interesting is if you read Genesis, it talks about, in Genesis 2, back before, the pre-separation, the separation idea, it says, and whatever Adam called these living creatures, that was its name. So God gave Adam the ability to name things, but this was like in the beginning, because obviously in this allegorical story, I guess if you believe it literally, that's fine. But that's the point. He gave him the ability to name things. We're created in the image and likeness of God, so therefore with our thoughts we can create, or now with our thoughts we can make stuff up. And so that's whether we're going to create with fear or with grace and truth. But that's what's interesting, because, he gave him the ability to name things, but once the belief of separation comes in, you may be able to name it, but that doesn't mean you know what it is. And it's very funny, because I've always found that when God's trying to give us a message, it's like right under our nose. And one of the things, think about a phrase that most of us never heard till about a little over a couple of years ago, and that is fake news. We always hear about fake news. But think about it. If we are able to name things without really knowing what they are, which is what we do every day, because we're naming things based on the past, we live in a belief system that's all fake news. It's not real. It's fake information. It's false evidence appearing real. It's fear. And that's what the Course in Miracles makes very clear, that, there's only really two things, love or fear, and fear is not real. So there's really only one thing. And in my other message, only love is real. But I'm really expanding on really, what is love? What is God? What are we? Because there's so many names you can use. Just like all three of those scriptures, whether it's Saint Francis or Paul or the writer of the Rig Veda, it's the same idea of lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from the unreal to the real. So that's really what all of this is about, is the real, is reality. And the truth is, your brain believes whatever you tell it. So you can either make stuff up with fear, or you can create a life of love and truth and beauty with grace and truth. Just to break it down very simply, because, if you just want to take, we've got reality versus unreality, grace versus terror, truth versus miscreations, love versus judgment, peace versus anxiety, patience versus sharpness, kindness versus dissension, gentleness versus contention, self-control versus selfish ambitions. These aren't opposites. They're a continuum. The potential for reality, grace, truth, love, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, and self-control is there. And once the fear is seen through, you'll experience it. The only thing that stops you from experiencing it is the belief that it has an opposite and that both are equally real. which that is not reality. And I'll give you an example of something that happened kind of playing around with these crazy ideas this week. Because when Deepak's talking about this grace, you know, it made me think about something important. Because just like if you're in a 12-step program, especially, I'm going to go from AA because that's the book I know. But it talks about, you know, just like in the 4th step, we make an inventory of all the people we resent and all the reasons why. But then we have to flip the script and start looking at, hey, buckaroo, what was your part in all this? Well, this is another way to get to gratitude, because it really occurred to me, because there's also a fear inventory in a 12-step program. And so, you know, just like the 12 and 12 talks about, there's self-centered fear, which is either fear of not getting what you want or fear of losing what you have. So on one end, that's all the selfish ambition for trying to get what you want. But let's look at these fear of the things that we're most afraid of losing. Is not the thing I'm most afraid of losing really the thing I'm most grateful for? So just with that information, if I feel a sense of fear of the safety of someone I love, instead of conjuring up images and ideas of fear, I can use as an opportunity to express to that person how important they are to me, how much I love them, and how much their safety and security and happiness is of utmost importance to me. What a better use of my time. You know, that's what the Course talks about. That's even what the Enneagram, you know, Riso and Hudson talk about, is we have to be responsible for our thinking. We can't just let ourselves free flow thinking. I can't free flow think and I can't free flow eat. I have to monitor what I eat and I have to monitor what I think. It's all the same thing. I have to monitor the input in my life. And if I will slow down and be still, I will recognize the difference of that the input is negative or positive, because it's the difference of whether I feel at peace or whether I feel afraid and have anxiety. You know, and the Course talks very clearly. He says, you know, Jesus, I believe the Course in Miracles was written by Jesus, but it says very clearly, you can't ask me to remove your fear because fear doesn't exist. But you can ask me to show you where your thinking's off that's causing that. So what a wonderful thing if every time we become afraid, we ask God to show us, where is my thinking off that I'm afraid? It's the very same thing as pause when agitated. You know, and that's the point though. We can't get here without doing this work. We can't just float through our day and think about whatever we want and expect to be awakened. Because awakening is becoming aware of the unrealness of some of the things that we've believed. You know, I've been on this journey for a long time. It's been almost 33 years now. And my whole journey has been about unlearning misperceived ideas that I can know the truth. It's a process of unlearning more than learning. The truth is there. If we unlearn the things that block us, then the truth will just emerge. But just like I said, you know, I had a very powerful experience with that. So every time I start getting afraid of something, instead, I just give thanks for that person. I give thanks for that situation. You know, you may or may not know me, but back in 2015, my then 18-year-old daughter was in a situation with drugs, methamphetamine, and it resulted in her being shot in the head with a .357 Magnum gun. A hollow point bullet exploded her right temporal lobe, and then they thought they killed her, so they wrapped her up in a blanket and dumped her on a dead-end road. And you know, the last time I saw her before that happened, she's okay now. Okay, that's a different story. That's next week's story. But the last time I saw her before she was shot, because she was living so wild and so crazy, I said to her, you're either going to end up dead or on the side of the road. And often I've wondered, how much power did I give to those thoughts by always being afraid that she was going to either end up dead or on the side of the road? You know, when people say, oh, you're not that powerful. And I'm not saying I caused it, but I am saying we need to guard our thoughts with vigilance. Because saying that to her is almost like cursing her. Yes, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I've also been in recovery a long time. I know where that life leads. But see, I said that. I not only thought that and visualized that, but I spoke that to her. So this is a reason why we need to get out of this duality trap and recognize that anything we're feeling that's negative and scary and makes us feel guilty or ashamed, we need to ask God to show us what's up with our thinking that we're doing that. That doesn't mean no, it does mean we can do whatever we want, because that's the thing. There is no law against truth. The law was established in the first place. If you know the Bible, Moses, went up on the Mount Sinai, came on down with the 10 Commandments, and the whole purpose of the law was to convict people of sin. But see, when you have the Spirit, it does its own convicting, but it doesn't do it in a convicting way. It does it in a very, here, let me show you this. When God corrects me, it's not like, you boy, you better, it's not judgmental. Because judgmental is just another end of the spectrum of having compassion. So that's what I want you to think about. The dynamic flow between these two seemingly opposite things, with the willingness to believe that only the positive is real. It's all good. Just like God said at the very beginning of Genesis, let there be light. And every single day at the end, he said that it was good. And then at the end of creating man, it was very good. So that's the challenge. Can you be willing to believe that you live in an unreality created by fake news? And are you willing? And do you want to know the truth? Because it's all as simple as asking. And so I kind of made up another prayer similar to the sinner's prayer, but more in line with what we're saying. Because the sinner's prayer is basically, hey, Jesus, I know that I'm a sinner. I recognize that I can have no righteousness without you. I know that I'm going to go to hell if I don't have you save me. So please come into my life. But what thing could possibly be more hell than being trapped in an unreality of fake news? So when you look at it that way, we're not asking him to prevent us from going to this mythical place called hell where people burn in eternal damnation because they didn't believe what God wanted them to believe, which in this thing with only truth is real, that is not real. That is scary, that is hateful, and that lacks understanding. So consider this in another way. And like I said, if you don't like the name Jesus, use whichever name works best for you. So here's the prayer. Jesus, or grace and truth, or any other aspect that makes sense to you, I invite you into my heart and mind to assist me in the ability to know truth from error. My own perceptions have left me with beliefs of fear and separation. Show me the reality that only grace and truth are real. Show me myself and the world in which I live through your eyes. Namaste and Amen.